us Lou Paints again, and we're gonna continue painting our miniature. And I've opened the window this time, like a few videos ago, particularly because we were done with most of the parts in the blending of the shadow area and defining, and you can see that this gray on the hand is now there because we placed the whites earlier. And now that we actually have more light, which is good, we can actually see how the colors of the miniature is like. Now this is actually getting really close to the miniature, so there's gonna be still a lot that we need to paint and get done, and there's going to be quite a bit to do with the colors that we are kind of smoothing down. But as of the overall, we are pretty much done. The only part where I have a bit of annoyance with the overall is that there's a shadow on the end here, so we're going to do that first. And after we get the shadow, we also need to place the highlights of the grays on the back of the hair, because the hair is for the most part still not done. Now if you're new to the videos, you'll be able to find the paints references at the bottom of the video, and towards the top right is the color chroma over here, and then towards the bottom left is our reference, and we're using the Dawn Glare Invoker from the Magic the Gathering card as our reference, and that card will play as our reference for like a shadow. And it's just a mild reference that we're using. It's not really something that we're trying to be too strict and obey, but always having a reference is a good idea in painting any miniature. You don't really need to obey it. It's more like you're trying to get the impression out of that concept art, and then relaying it over to the sculpture that you're painting. And that's actually how generally most 3D modelists and people who do sculpture art, especially for movies, they kind of have their work, they base it off a 2D image or a 2D artwork, because it's just easier to not copy, because you're not technically copying when you're doing a painting a sculpture of some kind, especially a miniature, but you're trying to get the annotations of it. And what I mean by annotations is that the impression, the feelings, the atmosphere, what does it mean to you. So you see, now I'm gonna put this teal into the shadows over here, to kind of place it all over here to kind of get it in our lighting. And then we're also going to get that orange into this piece of the miniature, like so. Just a little bit more at the top, like so. So if you see now, most of our values have already been figured out in the last few sessions of painting. So all we're really doing is that we're softening up stuff. We are just making small little changes to the things that we've already placed. We're really just defining our miniature as is. So if you can see here that I'm just kind of adding this small little orange over here, so that it shows that it bounces off the rest of the miniature. Places it a little bit here as well in the shadows, because it's coming from the sleeve, and I need to make sure that it's applied where appropriate, because it's getting, the colors are reflecting all over each other. Top here as well, and the top side I'll make sure to put a little bit of yellow, a little more yellow, a little bit more over here of that yellow and the white mix. So only when we started to do the detailing did I start mixing my paints in the traditional way, which is on the palette. Or I wouldn't say traditional way, technically all of this is like traditional art methods. So whether it's wet on wet or wet blending or whatever we call it. So, and then I'm just kind of adding small little details of it, just so that we have more definition over the model. So we're gonna zoom in so you guys can kind of see what I'm doing a bit more closely. And notice that we still haven't touched on quite a bit of stuff, especially to do with the skin tone right here. We haven't touched the what's that? The metals on the miniature, the tassels, those small little details, because those parts are going to be the most important bits of the miniature, so we're going to leave those for last, and just not going to be bothered by them right now. And I think what it is that back in my art schooling days, I used to have a lecturer, and he used to give us quite a bit of a trouble whenever we used to focus on details. And it was like the most frequented comment was like, don't focus on details first, don't focus on details first. And even when coming out into the art industry and doing freelance, doing freelance work or whatever, I keep doing the mistake of looking over the camera, like over it instead of through it. So every time when I look after the palette. Okay, so yeah, we have that to keep in mind, because and it's actually true, you actually don't grow as an artist as fast at the beginning if you keep looking onto a part of your painting rather than the entirety of it. It seems like it's like, if I don't pay attention to that one part, like, how am I supposed to get things done? But really, I keep saying this over again and again because I have it chalked into me in school for so frequently. When you pay attention on one part, what happens is that as a human being, your eyes tends to get fixated on those parts that you're painting, and you end up tricking yourself, because when your eyes get fixated on something, the way our human eyes and brains work, our perception of color and a lot of other things, they just kind of disappear. And when they disappear, what I mean by disappear is that a yellow will see more yellow if it's placed next to a indigo or a bluish violet, right? And when you look at certain colors and when you look at certain things, your mind gets fixated on it. I believe it's not so. That's just in the realm of colors. So there's another saying in that a tree trunk is only a tree trunk if you're not looking for a place to sit. And once you are tired and you really need a place to sit, suddenly a tree trunk becomes a stool. So the human mind works in a way that if it's looking for something, you are going to see things in the context of what you're looking at. So if you're looking at blue items, the likelihood of you trying to find a blue item that is a little bit more reddish versus a little bit more greenish becomes eluded, because you're not looking for the specificity of whatever you're looking at. So if let's say, so the way my eyes work when I'm casting over this model, if I'm working with light and shadows, I'm thinking about lights and shadows. If I'm thinking about color saturation and filtering colors, that's the next thing that I'm working on. I don't try to work on one piece first and then go and just kind of get that piece to perfect. It's like back when I used to learn to draw faces, for example, on a portrait. So I have portraits hanging on my wall, and so what I do was at the beginning when I was learning how to do portraits, I draw the eye first and I draw the nose first. And what I realized was that I always had this problem, and the problem was that when I drew the eyes and then I drew the nose would always seem kind of off from the proportions were just kind of off. It didn't seem like it was placed properly in comparison to the eye. And you see, that's basically the problem, because you're so focused on the eye, the lenses in which you're viewing that eye is not in the context of the whole head. It's only looking at the context of just the eye. And so human beings, we have this ridiculous flaw in that when we focus so much on something, we get so tunnel vision in that we are not able to notice other things. And that's horrible in painting, because when you try to paint something, it needs to be proportionate to the other things, which is why there's a lot of miniature painters talking about, let's say, contrast, right? But what kind of contrast are you talking about? Are you talking about contrast of hues, contrast of light and shadow, contrast of details, contrast of congestion in the amount of symbols and what do you call that, the brush strokes on a miniature? Because as much as it seems like those things, they don't matter, right? Because when you're talking about contrast, you just want to make things look different, but they do, because all of those things make up the part of the bigger whole, and you're not going to be able to get the kind of delivery that you want unless you think about every single bit of contrast and not the small things of it. Otherwise, people are going to point out the ridiculous mistakes that you kind of missed out. And it's always the mistakes that you didn't see. It's never the mistakes that you saw, because the mistakes that you saw, you probably got lazy and you kind of know what it is. But a mistake that you didn't saw is like, you think that, okay, I'm done painting, I don't know where to improve. And this is something that all artists have to go through at some point. You go ahead and you paint the thing, and then after that you're like, okay, I think it's done. Yeah, I know it's off, I'm not quite sure what's off, I just know it's kind of off. So then you go and ask somebody, and it's like, okay, they tell you what's off, and it's like, whoa, I can't believe you saw that, you can tell me exactly why it was off. And it's like, well, they weren't painting and focusing on one tiny detail as you were while you were painting it. So like right now, I'm focusing on details only after the fact that I've already gotten all my shadow values and whatnot in at least the best that I can do. Like, I'm not saying that I got all my values and everything's right, because I still can are able to tell that some things are kind of off, but I'm not trying to fool myself in that there are some things that's going to be on the miniature which I didn't get right, and it's because I'm too focused on one thing or another thing. So right now, as I'm painting, I need to make sure I get the right kind of magenta over here. Give me a second. And actually, I do need, let me check. This is blue. Oh yeah. I need to do the hair next as well. So I should probably take a bit of blue and then mix it with black over this primary cyan, and then we just kind of place it here. Okay, so actually we'll take a little bit more, clean our brush, make sure that our brush, we don't get any paints up in the ferrule. Get our black, whip this black in like this. If you guys don't mind, it's an airplane in the background. I decided to leave my window open, and then we're gonna get this blue underneath here in the hair, which is actually pretty important for us to get, because there was not much of a distinction between the hair that was underneath and the hair that was on the top. So just kind of make this distinction, especially towards down here, the hair underneath here as well. So this is a offset of Peruvian blue, if I recall. So if you ever picked out paints before, you'll notice that there's this kind of blue called Peruvian blue, and it's kind of like this policeman uniform blue kind of. So we're just kind of doing that with the hair right now. And the reason why we're adding this blue to the hair is because hair in itself, even though if we're looking at a person who's blonde, in the shadows the hair does kind of go into a bit of a blue saturation in it, so towards the shadows and in complete darkness. So that's what we're getting here. And we also want to get a bit of this blue over here next to this white, but you just need to be extremely careful about where we place this. So we place this here, take a bit more, place it there, place a bit more, and we want to make sure to clean our brush, because we don't want our brush to get paint down the ferrule, otherwise it'll split. Because paint brushes to me are really expensive. Okay, so let's just go ahead and take this white, mix in here, we need to make sure that we never allow our blues to get in our white paint. So we just kind of do it like this, mix it to the side here, and then we'll take this and then we will place it over in the yonder here, a little bit more, and then we want to put our skin tones, take that and plop it in there. It's like, what are we doing? That's because you want to get this dirty highlight, right? So notice that it's a gray now. It's kind of like this bluish gray. We're gonna take this bluish gray and we're gonna run down our hair behind here, This will actually be our highlights for the hair at the back. Okay, so we're just gonna go at it really thickly. It doesn't need to be clean. It doesn't need to be anything. I'm gonna add a little bit more. Okay, and we're just gonna go at it over the top here, and we're gonna define all those the parts of the miniature where it should be catching onto a bit of light from the cast, whatever is on this side. So just kind of go at it really softly, because there's a lot of color loss on this end that we're trying to make sure we portray properly. Take a bit of the Persian blue, add it to here. Okay, and we want to add some warmth. That's easy. We take a bit of magenta, we kind of put in here, like so. And then we can see that we have the more correct shadows. And we can always take our green. Just kind of go at it like this, at the sides later on, to kind of cool those a little bit. Take our skin tone, and onto over here. A bit to the side. Anyways, we're gonna put it over here. Okay. And we want to make sure that with those blacks underneath here, we don't just want to leave them be. So we're gonna put them in blue underneath to really contrast that yellow and make it seem a little bit more darker than it needs to be. Just a form of exaggeration. So one thing you can always do is you can always take a contrasting or complementing color and put it in your darks to actually get that difference going. We're gonna take a little bit of magenta here, and then we're going to go through it like this, just a little bit. So we got that difference between the front and the back. We're gonna take more of that that delicious yucky blue that we've already made, a bit more to the bottom here. See, in Malaysia where I live, it gets really cold and really hot, and then really wet. The weather just keeps changing. That's a great thing about tropical countries. So right now it's drizzling. In the afternoon it was ridiculously hot. And I probably should open the window a little bit more. Give me a second. And yeah, I should probably do that. So I'm gonna do that real quick. And give me a moment. Sorry for taking up like 2-3 seconds. But I do enjoy days when the drizzle is coming in. It's kind of like getting free ASMR. Anyway, so we're gonna take our turquoise, and then we're going to put the turquoise down into the darkest parts of the hair. And this won't be the end of it. We will still grab some of that brown that we've kind of already made and place it in here as well. So we'll just take this brown like so, then place it in here, and notice how it becomes like this kind of toxic dirty color. That will kind of go over it a little bit later, but for now this is actually what we want. This part as well, which you just want to make sure that we get that dirty toxic color in there. Okay, and later on these colors, like pretty much all of the undercoat that we've done with every part of the miniature, we will actually just blend it slowly, evenly into the back. So I'm taking this blue now, and it's like, oh, blue? What? This is primary cyan. and we're cooling off that those colors, the dirty colors that we've kind of placed in, just kind of cooling them off a little bit. Put in here, put in here, put in here. Okay, and see, this part is supposed to be left in the light, so we'll just kind of leave that here first, like so. Okay, down here, underneath here, and we pretty much got most of it. Underneath that sleeve is pretty important. Over here towards the back, and that's actually really good. Okay, so now what else oh yeah, that's right, you know, make sure that get here. Is it white enough? No, same. So later on we'll just go ahead and draw our fingers directly on the top of this, and they don't need to be too defined, but they need to be defined enough. Over here as well. See, over here especially, this is important. Okay, we just kind of fade in the shadows over here. Okay, what else do we might have missed? Or notice there's a part underneath the chin. It's not the lips. It's not bright enough. So we'll go ahead and take this magenta, place it here, and before we take our magenta, our white, to mix a kind of like a pinkish white. There we go. So we get this nice little pink that we have. And without even tinning our paints, we just kind of plop that onto the some lips. And then we will take this, put it here. Even out her face a lot more. And we will also need to lighten up her face a little bit, because right now it's just a teeny little bit too blue, pink. I think my little brother, when he saw it earlier, he said it was kind of like a vampire. And I thought that was really interesting. So just gonna go ahead and mix this in, the skin tones with the yellow a little bit more. Oops, paint in our pharaoh. Go away, paint. Okay, it's a good thing we actually have a lot of slow dry medium, which is the reason why my brush has been lasting pretty long. You could use flow improver as well, and you pretty much do the same thing. Kind of keep your paints from running up your ferrule and drying there. Just as long, make sure that you kind of be good with your paints about it. So right now I need to tint this. Okay, and I'm gonna rinse it again because you want to make sure it's really tinned. And let's go back to the face, and then we're going to go at it really softly. Just apply the yellow. What happens is that the yellow is actually going to even out our skin a lot more, and what we're doing is really well unifying the face. Putting more of it on this side, particularly this side is pretty important to put a little bit more. Okay, see that definition on the upper lip, which is great that we have. Oops, sorry. Take a little bit this, put it at this part, which needs to be a little bit brighter. Then we're gonna take just a teeny little bit of magenta, and then we draw it at the tip of the mouth over here, just the tip. And we're gonna continue on. Getting the outline of the face. We're just kind of negotiating between two different paints right now. Kind of slowly inching our way in between. Right. A little bit slowly. Making sure we clean up ourselves. That part of the face is kind of odd. For some reason that paint is not sticking on. Oh, I know why. There we go. Yep. We'll just go ahead and take it really slow in defining these points on the miniature. Because that part is really small, it's been kind of not getting the exact color that I want. Okay, we're getting there. Gotta keep going. There we go. Okay. Now, let's just go ahead and soften this part. Soften this part. So we are right now just kind of making sure we get the part on our miniature at the right point of light and shadow. Get all those details. Refine those tiny little points that might be wrong. Or rather, not wrong per se, but it isn't too well done. We'll let that black dry first before we. There's one more part which I need to put on it. Just a tiny little black. It's that mouth. There we go. We'll just take a little bit here. And we'll pop it at the crevice. So I'm gonna make sure to lighten it. Okay. Now we want to make sure to unify that chest because the chest is a bit of a mess. So make sure we do that. And pretty much most of what we're doing now is we're going at it really softly and just defining parts of the miniature. Okay. Okay, well, let's see what we've done here. Okay, right now we've pretty much already done the light part and we have most of the colors in the shadow. We have done a little bit of mistakes over here, but you can see after it dries, the color has mostly come together. It's really easy for us to fix. We just go ahead and top it like this. It looks a little bit cyan, but it's fine because we will add just a little bit of a difference over here just to contrast it. Now I want to make sure to get a point across with these lightings. It is actually pretty important to kind of get a small bit of contrast going on in the two sides of the miniature with the front and back, at least for my case. If you are having a miniature which you only just want to show one side for, let's say, a box art, you don't really need to do that, but you know, it is a sculpture. So the good thing about having a sculpture is that you can actually demonstrate a lot of these small kind of changes around the miniature, which is why I really enjoy cast lighting, or in miniature painting terms we call it OSL, on a miniature, because we're able to kind of do all these small little things to it. Now, okay, having said that, let's just kind of wrap it up here for now. First of all, thank you guys for watching, and then remember to keep learning from other artists and other miniature painters, and in that way you'll be able to discover more of yourself, right? So take care. Toodaloo.